The phone was already warm when I pressed it to my ear, like it had been breathing before I picked it up. I remember thinking that detail was strange, how heat lingered against my skin, how the glass felt faintly tacky, as if my fingers were interrupting something private. The room around me was still dark, curtains half drawn against a pale morning that hadn't fully decided to exist yet. My bed smelled like detergent and last night's sleep. My throat tasted faintly of toothpaste, ordinary things, safe things. "Hey," Matt said into my ear, his voice low and lazy, already smiling. I smiled back automatically, even though he couldn't see it. "You called me," I said. "It's early." "Couldn't help it," he said. "I woke up thinking about you. That fit so well it slid right into place, like a memory you don't question, because it already belongs to you." My body relaxed before my mind caught up. I rolled onto my side, tangled in the sheets, staring at the faint crack of light along the ceiling. "About what?" I asked. There was a pause, just a breath too long. Then, "About the way you laughed last night, when I spilled the wine." I laughed again, quiet this time, because that had happened. Red wine, his stupid white rug, both of us frozen for a second before dissolving into giggles. "You were so mad." "I was pretending," he said. "You know that." "I did, or I thought I did." His voice carried that familiar cadence, soft at the ends of sentences, like he was always letting thoughts trail off rather than end. It wrapped around me easily, comfortably. I shifted, the sheets whispering. "You didn't have to leave so early," I said. "You could have stayed." "I know," Matt said, "but I liked watching you fall asleep." The words sent a warm, intimate shiver through me. My eyes closed. I pictured him sitting on the edge of the bed, tying his shoes, the way the streetlight outside his apartment window cut his face in half. I could almost smell his laundry detergent, clean, sharp, something citrusy. "You were drooling a little," he added, amused liar. "Swear you wiped it on my shoulder." "That is not true." "It is," he said softly. "Right here." I shifted again, suddenly aware of how quiet my room was. No traffic noise yet, no neighbor's radio, just his voice and my breathing. "You're creepy," I said, but I was smiling. He chuckled, and for a moment everything felt exactly right. Then the sound changed. It was subtle. So subtle, I might not have noticed it if I hadn't been half awake, if my mind hadn't been floating just beneath the surface of sleep. His voice didn't crack or distort. It didn't drop suddenly into something monstrous. It just lingered differently, like his mouth was too close to the phone. "Do you remember," he said slowly, "how you stood by the window?" My eyes opened. "What?" "Last night," he continued, "when you stood by the window, you were fixing your hair. The glass reflected you back at yourself." I frowned. "Okay." "You looked like you were checking to see if someone was watching." A thin, almost laugh, like sound passed through the line. Wet, too textured. "I don't remember that," I said. There was another pause, this one longer. "You don't?" Matt asked. "No," I said, more firmly. "I mean, I stood by the window, yeah, but you don't remember looking out," he finished. Something inside me tightened. "Why are you saying it like that?" he exhaled. I could hear it clearly, breath brushing the microphone. "Just thinking about it," he said, "about how close the glass is to the sidewalk." My stomach dipped. "Where are you right now?" I asked. "At home," he said immediately, too immediately. "Where else would I be?" I rolled onto my back, staring at the ceiling. "You said you had class." "I do. So I'm leaving soon." Another breath, another faint, sticky sound, like lips parting. "What are you wearing?" he asked. I laughed, sharp and reflexive, trying to shake the unease. "You don't usually ask that." "I know," he said. "Humor me." I looked down at myself, oversized t-shirt, bare legs, just a shirt. "Which one?" The warmth drained from my chest. "Why? I like imagining it," he said. "It helps." "Helps with what?" There it was again, that fractional delay, with missing you. My phone vibrated against my palm. A text notification. I glanced down without thinking. "Matt, on the subway. Signal's trash. Talk later." The room seemed to tilt. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering, my heart suddenly loud in my ears. The call timer kept counting up. The voice was still there, breathing. "Who's that?" he asked. My mouth felt dry. "What?" You looked away, the voice said. "I can tell when you look away," I swallowed. "You're not on the phone with me," I said. Silence. Then, softly, "I am." My gaze flicked between the call screen and the text, my brain scrambling to reconcile them. "Matt is on the subway," I said. "He just texted me." A sound slipped through the line, not quite a laugh, not quite a sigh. "Oh," the voice said. That. I echoed, my pulse hammering. "Who is this?" Another breath, slower now, deliberate. "I was hoping you wouldn't ask yet," he said. Cold crept up my arms. "You sound like him," I whispered. "I practiced," the voice replied. I sat up, the sheets falling away from my legs. "This isn't funny, I know," he said. "I'm not joking." My phone vibrated again. "Matt, just got service. You okay? Miss you." The room felt too small, the walls too close. "Stop calling me," I said into the phone. "But you answered," the voice said gently. "You listened. You talked to me like you talked to him." Tears stung my eyes. "How do you know all that stuff?" "I watch," he said. "From where?" Another pause, longer. He seemed to savor it. "Through the windows," he said. My breath hitched. "You live close together," he continued. "You forget how visible you are. Lights on, curtains open, bodies moving, touching." My skin crawled. "I'm hanging up." "Wait," he said quickly. "Please don't." I froze at the word please. It sounded almost sincere. "Why?" I asked, my voice shaking despite myself. "Because this is the only time you've really listened to me," he said. "You tell him everything. You laugh with him. You let him touch you. I just watched." A lump formed in my throat. "That's not." "I know his apartment better than you think," the voice interrupted. "The way the floorboard creaks near the bed, the crack in the paint above the window, the spot where you leaned your head back and closed your eyes." My stomach twisted violently. "You tasted like salt," he said. "When he kissed your neck, I felt like I was going to be sick." "Who are you?" I whispered. Another wet sound, like a smile forming too slowly. "My name's Mike," he said. "I live across the street, 3rd floor, the one with the blinds that never quite close." My vision blurred. "You're lying." "I wish I was," Mike said. "But if I was lying, I wouldn't know about the scar on his hip." My hand flew to my mouth. "You traced it with your finger," he continued, voice thickening, warping just slightly now. "Too low, too close. You thought he was asleep." I pulled the phone away from my ear like it had burned me. The room spun. "Tell me your address," Mike said suddenly. "What? Your address?" he repeated. "I want to make sure I have it right." "You already know it?" I said weakly. Another pause. This one stretched, heavy and deliberate. "I want to hear you say it," he said. A sound came from outside my window. A faint scrape. I turned slowly, my heart slamming against my ribs, and looked at the glass. The curtains were still half open. Morning light washed the room in a dull gray. "I can see you," Mike said softly. "You look smaller without him there." My phone slipped from my fingers and hit the bed. I backed away from the window, every nerve screaming. "I didn't mean to scare you." His voice continued from the mattress, muffled but still clear. "I just wanted to know what it felt like, to be him, to hear you the way he does." The scrape came again, closer this time. I didn't answer. I couldn't. "You were so warm," Mike said. "You sounded so real." I grabbed my phone, ended the call, and ran. I don't remember getting dressed. I don't remember locking the door. I remember the hallway smelling like dust and someone's cooking oil, my bare feet slapping against the tile, my lungs burning as I took the stairs 2 at a time. I didn't stop until I was outside, the city loud and indifferent around me. Later, hours later, I stood across the street from Matt's apartment while he talked to the police, his hands shaking, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. They went up to his place, checked the windows, the locks, the narrow strip of grass behind the building. One of the officers crouched near the window and held something up between 2 fingers, a cigarette butt, still damp. Flattened grass pressed into the dirt beneath it, like someone had been standing there for a long time. Watching that night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at my phone, listening to every sound the building made. Pipes knocking, footsteps overhead, the hum of distant traffic. At some point, my screen lit up, an unknown number. No message, just a missed call. I turned the phone face down, but I could still feel it warm against the mattress, like it had been breathing. I shouldn't have given him my number. The thought hits me every time my phone buzzes. The small tap against my palm is a signal, a warning that I've ignored, but I don't know how to stop. My stomach tightens before I even check the screen. It all started with the table. I didn't think it was anything to worry about. Just a normal post on a local church Facebook group. The kitchen table was old, scratched up, but it worked just fine. Someone would need it, I thought. We were getting a new one this weekend anyway. I didn't think twice when I sent my number to David, the guy who commented. Church members, the people I knew and trusted. Nothing to fear. Then the phone rang. I was standing in the kitchen, stirring the spaghetti sauce. The hum of the refrigerator, usually so comforting, suddenly seemed to stop, leaving the kitchen in a silence that felt heavy and pressurized. My hand stilled over the pot, the wooden spoon frozen mid-swipe. The vibration of my phone on the counter broke the stillness, like a sudden clap of thunder in a quiet room. Unknown number flashed across the screen. I picked up. Hello. His voice wasn't what I expected. Low, slow, and rough. There was no mistake that it wasn't David's voice. I saw the table post, he said. There was a sharpness to his words, an odd, breathy pause after every sentence. He didn't seem in any rush to talk, his words drawn out as if savoring them. Is it sturdy, I mean? The legs. Are they sturdy? I blinked. Excuse me? The legs, I need to know if they're sturdy. If I drag it across the floor, will it scream? His voice was sickly sweet, too careful, as though he didn't want to give too much away. The noise from the kids outside filtered into the room, a slight hum of their voices, the occasional burst of laughter. I felt the pressure of the moment, like I was trying to focus through a fog. Who is this? My voice was quieter than I intended, but the words still came out sharp. David, he answered, from church. I like the table. Your kids. How old are they? They like it too, right? I froze. The world outside the window, the sun shining, the kids running in the backyard, seemed to blur, to slip just out of focus. How did he know? I never mentioned anything about my kids in the post. My breath hitched. How do you know that? I stammered. Another pause too long. Then the voice spoke again, so low, almost as though he were whispering. I've been watching. I couldn't breathe. My legs felt unsteady. It was like the ground under me had suddenly shifted. The last thing I remembered was my hand gripping the phone so tightly I could feel the smooth plastic digging into my palm. But I wasn't sure if that was real or if it was in my head. Then the line went dead. I didn't move. The sound of the kids' laughter outside was still there, but now it was faint, as if it belonged to someone else's world. I was alone in this house, with the weight of that voice in my head. I didn't know who to call, or even what to say. I dialed my husband's number. Voicemail. Of course, he was probably still at work, as usual, unreachable. I stared at the screen for a moment longer. Then, before I could even process my own thoughts, there was another buzz. This time, I didn't hesitate to pick up. Hello? Hello. I want to taste you, the voice said. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing myself to hang up, but my hand refused to let go of the phone. The words felt like acid in my ears, a dark poison that made the room feel smaller, tighter, like the walls were inching closer with every passing second. I wanted to cry, to scream, but instead, I hung up and stared at the phone. My thumb hovered over the screen. I had to do something. I had to do something now. I blocked the number, but I already knew it wouldn't matter. Another call came 10 minutes later. The same deep, low voice. I need to know something, I swallowed. What? Does the table stain easily, like red wine, or other things? The pause stretched between the words like he was savoring them. I need to know if it stains easily. If it could hold something down. I clenched my teeth. Who is this? But there was no answer. Only the sound of soft breathing on the other end, before the line went dead. I sat there for a moment, my mind spinning the table. Red wine, other things. The way he spoke, like it wasn't just about the furniture anymore. It was something worse, something far worse. My hands fumbled with the phone again, But the screen had a glitch. The app to block calls froze, and the app's number count flashed 9,999. The numbers didn't add up. The app wasn't working. The kitchen was suddenly too quiet. The hum of the fridge was gone. Everything felt too still, too wrong. I didn't know what to do. That's when I decided to message David, try to get some clarity. Maybe he didn't know. Maybe someone had hacked his profile. It seemed like the only explanation, the only way to make sense of it all. "Did you give my number out?" I stared at the screen. No response. Minutes passed, maybe longer, but no reply. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until my phone buzzed again. This time, it was David's name popping up on the screen. He'd replied. "What's going on?" he typed. "I don't understand." I felt an uncomfortable twist in my gut. I glanced down at the screen again, typing out a reply with shaking fingers. "Someone is calling me. I think they got my number from you. I don't know what you mean. Look at my phone. I haven't given anyone your number." I didn't know why, but I felt the cold rush of dread sink into my bones. "Send me a screenshot," I typed, my words coming faster now, almost demanding. David's reply came quickly. "See? No messages from you?" He sent a screenshot of his messages, the recent ones, showing no sign of my number anywhere. The name at the top of his screen was Jessica, but there was no record of my contact anywhere else. My hands began to tremble again, but this time, I wasn't sure if it was from fear or disbelief. The stalker's calls hadn't come from David, not from anyone I knew. Suddenly, I realized I was no longer just dealing with a person. I was dealing with something invisible, a ghost hiding in the machine, waiting to find a way inside. I was paralyzed in the moment, staring at the phone in my hand, the screen suddenly feeling like it was burning my skin. David's message blinked on the screen, the innocent words a sickening contrast to the growing dread in my chest. "Look at my phone. I haven't given anyone your number." I couldn't respond right away. My mind was racing, trying to piece together the puzzle that was falling apart around me. This wasn't David, or if it was, he was as much a victim as I was. The stalker wasn't some guy from church. He wasn't anyone I could confront or even explain it to. I needed to think. I needed to breathe. I glanced at the time. It was late afternoon now. The light outside had softened, the sunlight filtering through the blinds and casting long shadows on the walls of the kitchen. The world outside, the kids still playing, the neighbors out in their yards. It all felt like a facade. The familiar suburban routine, the ordinary scene of a Tuesday, had become alien. The daylight should have been safe, but now it felt more like a trap. "I'm inside." The text came out of nowhere, breaking my trance. I could feel the words burn through the screen. It wasn't just the threat, it was the certainty. He was inside. I slammed the phone down, stepping away from the counter. The sound of my footsteps echoed too loudly in the empty house. The refrigerator hummed again, louder than before. My heart started racing, but it was different now. The fear had stopped being something abstract. It was real, pressing down on me like the weight of the air itself. I grabbed the kitchen knife, dumb but instinctual, and moved toward the living room. The windows were locked. The back door was locked. My kids, still in the backyard, were completely unaware, and then my phone buzzed again. I froze, the knife still gripped in my hand. I didn't want to look, didn't want to see the screen, but I couldn't stop myself. The message was a photo. I stared at the image, my stomach clenching. It was a picture of the back of my head, the back of my head. The angle of the shot was off. It was taken from below. I didn't need to check the reflection in the toaster to know where the photographer had been. The angle of the picture was all wrong. The surface of the table was just visible in the shot. The back of my head caught between the glare of the kitchen lights. But the reflection, there was something there. The blinds, there were faint fingerprints on them. The reflection was barely visible in the glass of the toaster, but it was there, the outlines of someone hidden just out of my view. I could barely breathe as I realized it. Whoever took the picture hadn't been standing behind me. They'd been above me. I took a step back, dropping the knife without realizing. My legs trembled. The attic. I ran for the stairs, my feet pounding on the hardwood floors. The kids were still outside, oblivious, and the door was locked behind me. I couldn't think. I could only move. At the top of the stairs, I froze again. My fingers trembled as I reached for the hatch. My pulse thudded in my ears. The attic door was slightly ajar. A draft, a small faint smell of dust and something else. A wet metallic tang. I could hear it then, breathing. It wasn't the sound of air moving. It was deliberate. Slow, methodical. The sound of someone trying to breathe quietly. I froze, listening, heart hammering. My body rigid. The breathing came from above me. It was coming from the attic. I didn't want to look, didn't want to move, but something inside me propelled me forward. My hand reached for the handle, shaking with the weight of the decision. The door groaned open with an unsettling sound, a sound that seemed to reverberate through the entire house. The smell of must and dust hit my nose, but it was mixed with something worse, something wrong. I was on the edge of finding something. But what? What would I find? The breathing stopped. For a moment, everything was still. The house was silent except for the faint, distant laughter of my children in the backyard. And then, as if he were daring me to move, the phone rang again. I didn't pick up. I couldn't. It buzzed. I stared at it, unable to move. The screen flashed once more with restricted, and then finally, a message came through. "I can see you breathing, Jessica." The words were too much. I could feel my legs giving out, but I didn't collapse. I wasn't sure how I was still standing. I was numb to everything. The house, the sun outside, my kids who were still playing, laughing. None of it felt real anymore. Then, the sound came again. A footstep. I didn't move. I couldn't move. A soft shuffle across the floor. And that was when I realized it wasn't the attic. It wasn't from above. It was underneath. The phone buzzed once more, but this time I didn't need to look at it. I knew what it would say. "I'm under your bed." I dropped the phone, my vision blurring, my ears filled with the silence of the house. But it wasn't silence. It was the sound of slow, deliberate breathing, coming from under the bed I had just sat on. I felt my pulse stop in my throat. The world around me went blank, fading into the background as I stared at the floor, frozen. And then the door creaked open behind me. It was the kind of night that made time feel like it was dragging its feet, sluggish and heavy. The streetlights outside blinked faintly against the horizon, casting pools of yellow light that flickered through Emily's curtains. There was a silence that hung between us, the kind that only late-night boredom could produce. I sat cross-legged on her bed, my phone in hand, trying to shake off the sluggishness that clung to me. Emily was sprawled on the floor next to a half-empty pizza box, her fingers lazily scrolling through her own phone. The smell of cold cheese and dough lingered in the air, the kind of stale scent that only came from eating pizza too late. My stomach had started to hurt, the heaviness of the food mixing with the weight of the silence. "I'm so bored," Emily groaned, tossing her phone aside and flopping back onto the bed. "We should prank call someone." I blinked, the suggestion barely registering. "You're insane," I said, half laughing. "Who would we even call?" She sat up and smiled mischievously. "I don't know. Let's call your house, just for fun." I laughed, the absurdity of it making me chuckle. "You're a freak," I said, but the idea stuck in my mind. I was bored too, so I grabbed the phone from her and punched in my own number. I watched the digits glow on the screen, the weight of the decision barely registering until the dial tone filled the room. It was an old landline I'd had since forever. My mom had insisted on keeping it even after everyone switched to cell phones. The ringing felt louder than it should, too sharp in the quiet night. The first ring felt empty. The second felt odd, like there was something about the way the phone's pulse echoed in the room. Too slow, too deliberate. By the time the third ring hit, I felt the shift, a kind of static hum that didn't belong. Something about it, something about the way the air felt heavier suddenly, made the room feel like it was pressing in on me. The line clicked, and the tension in the air thickened. The voice that came next wasn't mine. It wasn't anyone I knew. "Hello," came the rasp, the words almost lost in a wet smack. It wasn't even clear if the person was trying to speak. There was something raw in the way the words were pulled out, something unhinged. I froze, fingers still gripping the phone. My stomach churned. "Hello." I tried again, unsure if the first response had been a mistake. The voice came again, a gurgling wetness in the tone. "You shouldn't have called." I felt the room around me compress, everything going still. Emily's eyes locked with mine wide, unsure. I opened my mouth to speak, to say something, but the words were stuck in my throat. The voice wasn't human. It wasn't the sound of the lips parting, wet and too slow, made my skin crawl. There was a pause and then dead silence. No breath, no movement, just a thick, sickly quiet hanging in the air. Emily reached for the phone and hung it up with a sharp click. "That's freaky," she said, her voice trembling just slightly. I didn't laugh. I didn't feel like laughing. That wasn't funny. My voice felt too small, too shaky for how calm I wanted to be. I set the phone down and stared at the spot on the wall across from us. But my mind wasn't there anymore. It was on the phone call, the voice. "Maybe it was a prank," Emily said, though she didn't sound convinced. But I wasn't convinced either. I couldn't stop hearing it, the wet sound of that voice, and I couldn't ignore the growing tension inside me. The house across the street, my house, looked dark, just like it had when I left this morning. But something was wrong. I didn't know what, but I felt it. The next hour dragged. We tried to watch a movie, but I kept glancing at my phone, unable to focus. Something about the darkened windows of my house across the street felt off. I tried to write it off as my mind playing tricks. That was until the light turned on. The bedroom light in my house flickered, casting a yellowish glow into the night. I froze, the hair on my arm standing on end. I was certain it hadn't been on earlier. I knew it hadn't. I stood and walked to the window. Emily followed me, her face pale. We watched, still as statues, as the light flickered off again. Then we saw it, a shadow. A dark figure passed in front of the light. My stomach dropped, and I felt my throat close. "What the hell?" I whispered. Emily's fingers were trembling as she reached for her phone. "I'm calling the cops." The police arrived within 20 minutes, but by then, the figure had disappeared. We hadn't seen anything since, not through the window. The only thing we knew for sure was that the light had flickered on and off again, and the shadow, whatever it was, had moved behind the curtains, just like a person. I didn't know why we didn't go over to check it out. Maybe we were both scared. Maybe it felt too real, too dangerous. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the voice on the phone hadn't been a joke. It wasn't funny. It wasn't a prank. And now, something was moving inside my house, like it had been waiting for me to come back. When the officers stepped inside, I barely recognized the house. It felt wrong. Everything felt wrong. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken windows, no signs of anything, just the phone. The landline, off the hook, the receiver still warm. The cord had been ripped out of the wall, and the base was smashed, like someone had slammed it down with extreme force after hanging up. The officer who'd been inspecting the house turned to us, his face pale. "Nothing, but something's off. It's like someone was just waiting for you to come back." I didn't know what to say. How could I explain it? How could I explain the feeling that someone had been there the whole time? But that wasn't what struck me the hardest. It was when the officer mentioned something offhand. "The deadbolt was unlocked," he said, examining the door frame. "Did you forget to lock it?" My chest tightened. I hadn't. The hairs on my neck stood up as I realized it. That morning, when I'd gone to the door, when I'd put the key in the lock, I had known it was locked. I had double-checked it. But when I tried the handle, the door turned easily. It was already unlocked. I hadn't entered because something in my gut told me not to. I hadn't gone in because I'd known someone else was there. The night dragged on, the silence thick between Emily and me. The police left. The house remained still. I couldn't stop thinking about the shadow, the voice, the way the light had flickered in my room. But it was the last thing I saw that night that made my stomach churn. From the window of Emily's bedroom, I stared out at my house, waiting for something, for the wind to move the trees or the shadows to shift. But it didn't. Then, the light in my room flickered on again. A shadow moved against the curtains. I saw it clearly now. A figure standing still, watching. The shadow didn't move at first. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, it turned. The figure's head seemed to swivel, its dark outline turning toward Emily's house. I couldn't see its face, but something in the stillness told me it was looking right at me. The figure raised something in its hand, a notebook. My notebook, the one I'd left behind on my desk, the one I'd forgotten about when I ran out the door earlier that day. Then it waved, and I froze.